All right, Allison, are you ready?
Yep, good to
Great.
go. All right, good morning, everybody from the East Coast of Australia, and good evening from the West Coast of the US and everywhere in between. Thanks for joining us. Ben Scott, who's my co-host today here, and I'm Alison Rice from CSIRO in Australia. And this has arisen from the successful Global Biofoundry Alliance meeting last year in Montreal. And Ben and I thought it was really timely to reinvigorate the business model, sustainability and value proposition working group. And we've met to discuss some of the key issues, which Ben's got up on the screen there. And we're really keen to engage with GBA members and the broader engineering biology community to discuss these really timely issues. What we've planned to do is to host a webinar every 3 months, and we'll be looking for speakers, and some, as Ben suggested, will be formally asked or told. Please, we'd love to hear from you. So I'm just going to hand over to Ben, and he'll talk about the housekeeping rules, and then we'll get started and introduce Sam.
Great, thanks, Allison. I'm really excited to be here as well, and I think yeah, it'll be great to keep the momentum going from the meeting in Montreal, which was a really fantastic meeting. So today it'll be more or less pretty casual. We'll have a 30-minute conversation or 30-minute presentation from our guest, followed by Q&A from the audience. You can raise your hand, and we'll ask for you to unmute, or you can. I think you should have access to a Q&A option after the presentation as well, if you'd prefer to type your question. And we expect the whole event to be about an hour. Following that, we'll edit it down a little bit and post it to the YouTube channel for those of you who couldn't attend or who want to watch it again. So I'm really delighted that Samuel agreed to speak here today. I had the pleasure of discussing a very similar topic with him previously while I was at the Concordia Genome Foundry. And now that I'm helping to set up a new biofoundry at the Global Institute for Food Security, can look through that topic about sustainability in a slightly different lens. So Dr. Samuel Oliveira obtained his PhD in bioengineering and computational biology at Tampere University in Finland, and his postdoctoral training in microfluidics and automation at Boston University. He's a research assistant professor and director of the Oliveira Lab, a recent research group at BU that focuses on reprogramming synthetic microbial communities and engineering microfluidic platforms for in vivo high throughput screening and point of care devices. In addition, he is also the senior manager of the microfluidics facility of the Design, Automation, Manufacturing and Processes, or DAMP Lab, the academic biofoundry at Boston University. Using the DAMP Lab's infrastructure, the Oliveira Lab focuses on engineering microfluidic, microscopy-based automation platforms to increase the throughput and reproducibility of temporal dynamic microbial studies. And in addition to all of that, I know that Samuel has a lot of experience dealing with and encouraging external partnerships and all that cool stuff at the DAMP Lab. So we're really excited to hear from him today. Take it away. Just stop my screen share here.
All right, Ben, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, great. So let me just go ahead and share my screen in 1 second. Okay, let's see if this is working. It's still like a black and can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so yeah, thank you very much for the very kind introduction. Ben, yeah, we met, I think it was like before pandemic time or something, and we were discussing about sustainable models for facilities like ours, especially academic facilities like the DAMP Lab. So in this probably next 30 minutes or so, I hope to share some of our experiences in the past 3 years. And this is pretty much like what I've been trying to do before I became a research assistant professor and started to focus more on research. But I think I have a lot of experiences in failures and then successful cases that we can maybe share and then have discussions, and then maybe you can try to imitate or prove me that I was wrong or prove that I was right or things like that. But then for those who don't know the DAMP lab, let me just give a little introduction before we jump on what are the models that we actually tested. So the DAMP lab, it's located in, well, here in Boston, the Commonwealth Avenue. This was like the original plan of the building. So we pretty much we have the same sort of like age of the building because we were here since the beginning. And then the building now looks like that. And CILC is this, well, say, Center for Integrated Life Sciences and Engineering. So we do a lot of cool stuff in here. There are like quite many departments occupying the floors here. And then I can tell you that we are on the 4th. Oh, that's wrong. Now we moved to the 6th floor. So we are on the 4th and the 6th floor of this building. And it's a building that is directed by Boston University. Although we occupy a particular space inside the Biological Design Center. So the DAMP lab, just like the building, was founded in 2017. And when I joined the lab when it was like 2019, when I came from my PhD to start my postdoc here in Boston. And I started like my hybrid life during my postdoc. So it was like 70% postdoc during research and 30% of my life I was trying to prove say interaction business model in a core facility that did not exist back then. So I inherited a lot of like good stuff from the previous manager, Marilyn Pavon. So she now moved to LanzaTech. She's a manager there as well. So we were working together for 1 or 2 months. That was the time that I overlapped with her, and I learned what we wanted to build. So I learned about the vision of the DAMP lab, which is this say dream of becoming a financially and legally sustainable automated core facility for testing high throughput, high quality, cost-effective synthetic biology goods and microfluidic devices. With the mission of making, always like in the process of achieving that goal, making tools and finding standards to help us like build all those bio and microfluidic devices, and then make it so it becomes a cheaper and a more accessible in a more accessible way. Now in the center here, I bring all those names because nowadays the DAMP lab from 2017 until today, we are actually composed of like 3 entities. I say the original DAMP lab is this tiny thing here. So it's like a synthetic biology facility where DNA foundry, we're assembling DNA of many sizes and sorts. And then when pandemic hit us in the US, we were challenged by the university to build up this say clinical testing lab, we call it CTL, to test for COVID for the entire university. So we did a tremendous job in putting together 8 Hamiltons in an assembly line and qPCRs and everything. So we could streamline the COVID test with nasal swabs and so on for the entire university. So we reached it up to a point that we were delivering like 5,000 tests a day, more or less. And then in parallel, there is what we call BL6, which is referring to the 6th floor facility where we're playing with microfluidics. Now the DAMP lab is this sort of like 3 entities playing together with different managers. And I started being the manager of the DLN, the DAMP lab North. And it's where I try most of my models and interaction models and business models. And then now I'm trying to push a little bit more the business, I could say, of the microfluidics facility. And we have dedicated managers for the clinical testing lab. I'm not really involved in that one in particular. Now, we know the Boston area is a very dynamic environment. So I think the question that I asked back in 2019 was, Okay, so we have like research labs around us. We have research labs from other universities that are in this region. Like, there's no way I cannot find a way to make money, or finding like a way to interact with these folks, right? And on top of that, there are also industry entities. So we could just also talk to big techs and biotech companies and startups and so on. So that was like my challenge, was just think like with all this interactive or very diverse environment around me, what would be the way to talk to them, right? So then the question started with me thinking, all right, so then what is this thing that I can provide, right? So first is research, because we're an academic inside academia, so we are researchers in nature. So of course, we could provide in a way where transition or some like knowledge transfer or something like that. And then luckily at some point, and then not so say straightforward, we could provide eventually services. And then I was thinking, well, so what is this thing that we know? What are the fields that we have involved here in our laboratories, in our like backgrounds and so on? So then we know that we knew about lab automation, from software to hardware to thinking like how to make cloud labs and stuff. We know about making throughput in software and hardware, so increasing the throughput of experiments. We have that background, and then there's also the background of basic research, so we know how to ask basic questions, but then we also know how to answer real life problems or talk to the industry and so on. We know how to make prototypes. It could be, and then thinking that prototype from hardware and software, and then maybe wetware, and I'll call it a wetware, everything that is like bio-related, like from cells to DNA molecules and so on. And then how do we go from prototypes to making robust solutions? That was another challenge. And then again, synthetic biology, well, just like being around making sort of like DNA fragments in large scale, into also thinking about what is this phenomena that we're studying, and then helping them. So all those big words, as you see here, in a complicated environment, they all mix together, and we had to find out where we're gonna place ourselves, how we're gonna talk to these folks outside and say, this is what we can do, right? So then again, research and services I bring here, again, or mission or interests, and then this is like a very important piece of information. So of course, there's like so many things you can do, but you should try to focus on what you can do the best in your interests, right? So, or mission mostly. So the mission, again, making tools and then finding those standards for making microfluidics and fabrication cheaper and more accessible. Then interest being metrics, or finding the quality metrics, or design metrics, or fabrication metrics. We like to talk about standards, reproducibility, or improving reproducibility in our experiments, and using automation for that mostly. And on top of everything, because we're in academia, low cost, high throughput, and then providing or promoting data exchange. Now, on the research side, we had, as I said, that DLN or synthetic biofoundry, and also we can do what we call internal collaboration. So thinking about having a robot, what can you do with that robot? So I think the first question is, well, ask around. So that was like one of the things that I did a lot. It was like just walking through the corridors and asking, oh, I have a robot, you want to test something, right? And then fortunately, we found some people who were actually interested in testing their experiments in robotics, or using the robotic systems. And then of course we would come with a pitch of like increasing reproducibility, finding those metrics, and then reducing costs and so on. And then as we did that, talking to laboratories around us, we were actually in the process making services. So because we were determining what were the metrics, and again, reproducibility and so on. And with that, we were trying to envelop some sort of like service that we could learn from research and then perhaps provide to someone else. And then that someone else is usually someone different. It's not the same person, of course, who's like making the experiments, but maybe someone from another department, say electrical and computer engineering department, who doesn't have a laboratory or infrastructure. And those folks, they just want to have like some cells to test some hypothesis or something, and they have no knowledge. They have no knowledge in biology or in automation or anything like that. Now, services would be a different audience, while research collaborations could be like the research audience, I would say, right? So both are research audience, but then they have different interests. Like one more to how to make it better, and the other how to make it at like the first place because I have no knowledge, right? So we explored that a lot in the last years, and I can tell you that. And then if I have to now organize these interactions and think about how we go about this, I say that this is how I organize my head. So then we would provide research expertise to research folks. And then we could provide also, of course, software and hardware development. We could help them with research questions on the research side. And then on the service side, I was trying to make more a business model kind of interaction where I'm not taking care of the problem. The problem comes from sort of like the real life problem comes from outside. We come with our technical expertise and all those services that we created, which we're calling now off the shelf. And it could be software, hardware, or wetware related. And then on top of everything, as you see there, our expectation was that research could give expertise just that could create services, and services in return would give like funds back, because now we're getting money to actually study and create new services. So it kind of creates this very nice cycle. And that was our hypothesis in this environment, right? And then on this side, I can start now populating some names. Like, so here we would come, as the example I gave, with an infrastructure for research projects. And then again, the example of like ask around in your floor who wants to use like a robot kind of thing. And on the other side, we are providing services, off-the-shelf services and materials, which we already figured, and we know it's robust, it works every time. Training, it's something that people usually are interested because they have no knowledge, like I said, and they come with the expectation that either you're gonna make the entire service yourself and then just provide a final product, or they could actually come and learn from you, which is also something interesting that you can sell. And then another thing we explored a lot was conferences and events, trying to promote the services that we can provide, or research collaborations, like I said. And then the eval, so of course, like to put in a matrix of this decision matrix, maybe where you have time and cost, you have to also pick what is the best project and the best relationship for the time and money you have available, right? So it's always like this cost benefit kind of relation that you have to evaluate before you commit to anything. And then bringing now some players in the scene. So first thing in red ball and red circle, there is BU. So ask around, is there anyone here in BU that wants us to do something about that? Or maybe startups, or maybe big techs, right? And then those are some of the deliverables that we were trying to make. So then on the other side, on the left side, I'm worried about making protocols, prototypes, MVPs. And on the left, on the right side, the services, I'm worried about creating business and creating relationships with this company, so I can maybe spin off something and then maybe create a new service, or just like continue my relationship with the customer. So there's always fun coming in. Right. Then looking back in my time when I was a manager of the facilities, before CTL mostly, there was also the question of how do we make a financial sustainable foundry, and this is always a question of how you're going to make yourself a professional laboratory, right? Because of course, if you're just a research lab, you don't think about costs, and you don't think about like the legal terms and how can you actually put yourself in the market and legally, responsibly provide some service to anyone? Is this something that your university allows or not, right? Those type of questions were questions that I had to go through. So I had to talk to, well, of course, the BU administration and figure out how to make those industry engagements. Like how should I dress to go to these places, right? So what is the term? What is the sort of like contract I have to build? And what are the terms I have to put on the table? What can I agree or not agree? And I think the most important and probably most difficult part was pricing, because as an academic lab, we're non-profitable, right? So we don't want to make money or anything, but at the same time, we want to pay the research and the time of like researchers and consumables. So how do we put the right pricing? And then of course, when I was asking all those questions, I was able to then make our DNA Foundry a core facility inside BU, and making it a core facility was key, and determine how I could interact with different laboratories. So I think if you're searching for like what is your first step to start becoming more professional, I would say try to work with your BU your university departments. I don't know exactly the names in your university, but I would say try to work around this like administration, legal people, lawyers sometimes, to understand how to make your foundry a core facility for the entire university. That was key, and then that was our way to go out of the market, in the market. So now we could now say, here's the price, here's how you can pay me, here's the payment method, here's how I receive, and here's how I deliver the products back to you. And then to guide me doing that, I was calling some of the projects that we were doing in our research labs, and it was like pushing some of those fronts and saying, well, in the research side, this is what I'm interested in, and in the services side, this is what are the things that I have available that we can call as a service, and you can come here and ask and buy, right? So then I had to put myself outside with certain in a certain way people connect to me. So you have to also say, what is this thing that you do, right? And what are the projects that I can get involved? And this is what I brought from sort of like 2020, and then there's a missing one there, 2021, 2022. And nowadays I'm sort of like fading out a little bit in the DAMP lab as I'm building my own research laboratory. But then I'm also thinking the same way for the facility, for microfluidics facility. But that was like my sort of like a roadmap for projects and services throughout those years. And that was the connection points with customers and research collaborations. Always there, I was taking them also in parallel. And then the question that I think everyone probably is asking is, okay, now this is great. How do you capitalize, right? So I kind of gave already some indication how to capitalize, but I wanted to bring this slide in sort of like categories. What are the things that we actually thought about? Like what are the items or categories that we can explore? So I could call 5 categories. So then I say sponsor projects, again, research, right? So I need to pay my lab tax. I need to pay DAMP operations for that. I need some money in some sort of like a kind, or in some sort of like money funds from grants and things like that. And that actually worked out. So we got like in the last 3 years, we got I don't know, maybe 15 projects from different laboratories. I would say, and even like myself now that I became a research assistant professor, I'm one of those folks that has like a laboratory that doesn't have infrastructure, and I'm using the DAMP lab, and I'm using my funds from my grants to pay the DAMP lab folks to deliver products for me. So of course I created this space where I could also make use of, which is great. So that kind of also validates the model. Services and products, that's like, again, off the shelf in the service, like kind of like right side of the model. Training, again, events and conferences, and then providing infrastructure. Some people all they need is like a little space to do some experiment and make use of I don't know, maybe a robot that you have or things like that, and they can pay for the time of the equipment. And you can make use of that. Like I know many core facilities here at BU also provide the same thing. And of course, it makes sense for us to provide the same thing as well. And then the question now becomes, after you kind of come up with those 5 sort of like ways to make money, I would say, you think how you can interact with the DAMP lab now. So now I have to give them like an idea how to interact. So I was working in, okay, some arrows here are just like missing. So I'll go, just forget about the red arrow. So again, so if you're a researcher, I was explaining to these folks coming from that little cloud, if you're a researcher, maybe you have your own grants, maybe you want to write a grant together, and then let's have a discussion about intellectual properties, like how much, what is the infrastructure, for how long you need, right? And that would boost internal or external collaborations, where either, and then ideally you want to talk to someone who has already some money, right? Some funds that can be easily transferred to your account. But of course, if you also want to like write grants, that's an option. That's an option. Of course, is an option, and then you can just put yourself as part of the infrastructure that grant need for anything. And then of course, that is the DAMP lab who's writing the grant. It's not myself as a PI, right? So then there should be the DAMP lab relation, not myself relation. And then that. After you plan that, it's just a question internally for us, and this is like an our model, so you can take as a little template for you. So we would ask the question: is this more related to the DAMP lab north, which is synthetic biology, DNA fragments, or is a DAMP lab south? We call it south back then, which is more microfluidics. And then I said, okay, maybe we want to make like scientific results while we're doing all that and everything has been paid. We can also have as a deliverable scientific results and publications and so on. So you can make a very nice relation there. Now, another way is if they have their own grant and now thinking about services. So they have their own grant, they have funds, and whatever they're interested, it's something we already have. It's off the shelf. They go and pick or in our website or somewhere. They see the list of services we provide, and then they basically just submit some order, and then we get that order, and then we can think about how we're gonna make it using our infrastructure. And then here I just, it's a simple relationship, or it's a simple slide, but then I can bring a lot of like questions, which is, for example, thinking about a cloud lab, for example, structure. This could be something where many foundries could talk, right? So especially if you're talking about something that is like placed, an order that is placed in China, for example, like it doesn't make sense that I'm the one here in Boston making that. So if you can think about a vision where every single foundry is now connected in a cloud structure, and then we have all the standards and everything for all the services that we are providing. Now we can start to think that maybe there's this cloud that receives orders, and then there's a way for us to maybe communicate and see which one would make more sense to take that job and then provide the deliverables, right? And that is like an effort in technology that I put in there. Like maybe we need software tools to make those connections between labs, or of course we need software tools that everybody would have to use for organizing the design and fabrication and assembly and the testing steps of that particular DNA, for example, right? So what are the tools that we're going to use? Are we as a cloud lab, as a global alliance, are we keeping the same software as a standard? Like, what are the standards that we're using? So it gives like a lot of food for thoughts, I would say, about how can we make it possible. And then after that, there's a quote, and then we submit the job, and then again, questions about if it's in our case, this specific case, if it's like a DNA fragment or is a microfluidic device, and then as a service, now we can provide the materials, but we can also have conversations about services, IPs, patents, and things like that. Right. Then the other way, another thing, part of what I just showed in the other slide, when I talk about conferences and events, what we're selling is visibility, right? So we have all those Twitter accounts, like cool posts that we can have like on LinkedIn and things like that. So or maybe here, even in an event, in a conference, in a seminar, in a meeting that you're organizing, this is all good opportunities for you to share your space and then bring visibility to the industry or researchers. So why not, right? So why not also providing that in a way? And then again, as I said previously, the support for tech guys. And then the same idea would apply to companies. We just now change, instead of researchers, now you're thinking about companies, and the same thing it would apply. And now, with the exception that for companies, you have to be slightly careful, and you have to understand what are the legal parts. Like I wanted to bring this slide just to have this conversation about how the legal things happen here inside BU. So for example, everything starts with a conversation with the customer or researcher, whoever is like looking for you. And that will lead you to create a statement of work, right? So that's very common, natural for all foundries. And then in that statement of work, you're going to establish what is the relationship nature, what is the period, what is the IP, confidence, so all the terms, right? What you're agreeing to deliver in the end and things like that. That involves lab, the DAMP lab, technicians and relation, and that's something that you have to think about how you're going to use their times and things like that. But if you have a very nice idea of the pricing for time of everyone, time of machines and things like that, it should be an easy way for you to come up with a price. Now something, and then of course in our case here, because we're at BU, we are non-profitable, we're academic foundry, we don't care for IP, I would say. So, well, that's like a very nice way to say we cannot care for IP, because that's not allowed by university, by BU, for us to, you know, take any of like those properties from like the industry and then being or sharing IPs with the industry. So, and then I even put like those phrases that I got from BUs, like websites and emails that I exchange with people, where they say, careful, we cannot, we have to be focused on making or improving like or generating beneficial outcomes to the general public. So we are here to advance BU educational and research mission. So when we start to think about a lot of IPs and things like that, this is like when BU is like, oh, this is not good. So I would say that anytime we talk with anyone, we try to build the relationship up to here, more or less. And that would be something that we always like already trying to avoid, because that would involve BU lawyers, and that is very, very, very well, expensive time. You don't want to put that in your statement of work, right? And usually when conversations are involving like limited IPs or licenses or code development, so you don't want to also touch to this or get to that sort of like conversation that would require lawyers and everything. And here definitely you don't want to go this way, which is called fee for services. This is like a BU structure or legal structure, and we have to learn how to navigate through this and know how to stop them. And usually most of the projects, I would say like 90% of the projects that we do here are in this first line, very straightforward, stand off the work, and then we pay open source IP, we think of publications and move on, right? Or if it's a service, you don't even think about any of those things. It's a statement of work. We put those services and numbers of services and quotes, give a quote, get the payment. There's of course no IP involved in anything, because it's just basically a service that you're buying. And then we deliver the products in the end. Right. So then I think this is like more or less what I wanted to bring in terms of like discussions, and I'm sure we have a lot of discussion here already, discussion points, and we can build from this. But then I don't want to stop right now. I want to just continue and then in this other part of the presentation, I want to talk briefly about the DAMP lab and these actual services. And this could perhaps be good templates for you if you want to like build your own services. So again, the DAMP lab is in that beautiful building, Biological Design Center. We are in that floor and in that little space, and that's what we're calling DLN, or the DAMP lab North. And there is where we like to test low throughput, very heterogeneous services. When we're testing services in there, we still need like a lot of personnel in there, and it's basically semi-automated pipeline, so we don't have a lot of robots. On the other side, and the DAMP CTL is where we really tested like a high throughput, say, process, very homogeneous, like we're not allowing so much diversity coming in. So that process is streamlined, no one is touching. This is what we have to do. We have to repeat every time. Low personnel, a lot of stuff. This is like where we build the 8 Hamiltons in line, which is beautiful now, and it's fully automated, almost fully automated, to be honest. We still need some people to say, well, start buttons and stuff. And it's what we call the BU clinical testing lab, and it's been there from 21 to 23. That's all in the main floor. Now the services, now we're at a stage that we're now turning all those like equipment and infrastructure, and then we're repurposing everything to now provide services. And then here's like a mention of our facility, or our foundry in the core facilities list from the BU Boston University website. So you can find us there if you want. And in there, you're going to find a list of services just like this one. As an example, there's going to be like internal rates, external rates, and then depending where you are, you can pick that. And then if you're more interested in more service, oh yeah, and then that little mention, we're also part of the International Gene Synthesis Consortium, IGCSC. So that was important for us in terms of biosecurity. And then if you go to our website right now, you're going to see in services, this sort of like cartoons where you can see what are the services that we are calling off the shelf that you can just basically go and buy. And if you click, there's going to be a drop down menu that appears. You can just mouse over and you see the prices as well. And just hear more examples. So we like to play. We wanted to leave those like a little cartoony because just to bring some academia vibe or something like that. And then a complete list of services, of course, you can find in spreadsheets and PDFs that we also make available on our website. Now, very quickly talking about the DAMP microfluidics part, that's on the 6th floor. We call like the D6 laboratory, and we're not having any off-the-shelf services. We're not providing products like we are in the 4th floor. In there, our relationship is basically sponsorships. It's based on sponsorships with industry, and I'm very happy that we're now starting to get the first projects already on board, which is great. And then in a nutshell, what we do in terms of technology here, we like to play with droplets, generators, sorters, and sensing, and this is the type of devices that we can produce here. And we also like to play with electronic embedded microfluidics and optical systems, embedded microfluidics, and then multi-layer, very large integrated circuits like those ones, very complicated circuits where you need like solenoids to play with quake valves and pumps and so on, which is cool for multiplexing, routing liquid from place A to B and things like that. And I don't have a picture for capillary-based systems, but we also do that. And if you go now to our webpage, you're going to find something like that, which is coming soon for off-the-shelf services. But of course, if you want to play and have some sponsorships with us, you can also offer something like that. And in terms of sponsorships, there's also this flyer you can find in our website, which tells you what are the sort of like it's sort of like enveloping again, like wrapping up all that discussion about interactions and what you get, what we give, things like that. And we created this sponsorship tiers now, and it's mostly for I would say fourth floor or DNA and wetware stuff, not microfluidics. but it gives, again, like a very good idea of how we're thinking our customers should interact with us. They could either become partners, fully partners, or collaborators, members, or allies, and each tier would give you different perks and things you can have and get from us. And of course, each tier would have a different cost. And it could be annually cost or maybe monthly cost, depending on what we agree for sponsorships. And then finally, this is my last slide. Promoting this interaction or following the interaction model and promoting it is important. And one way, as I've been mentioning, is just by being part of GBA meetings and workshops, and also big venues like those ones, SLAS, BioIT, SynBioBeta conference meetings and stuff. And of course, we're also making our own, and I'm going to use this opportunity to also advertise a little about our workshop that we're going to have this year, June, from 12 to 14. So yeah, so then if you're interested in joining us here in discussions and understanding what we're doing here in terms of pilot projects and case studies for the 4th floor, for the 6th floor, you're more than welcome. Just like make sure to subscribe there, fill out some form. And I don't know more details about it, but just go ahead and our website and then check it out. And then my last slide, just to say, here's our team. So Doug Dansmore is the director of the 3 entities, the entire DAMP lab. I'm the manager of the microfluidics. Rita Chain is probably the oldest DAMP lab member. She's a senior lab tech, and everyone else in this picture now is somewhat related to either CTL or the new DAMP lab that we merged. We also have tons of undergrads coming for playing with us, because we also provide training, and this training usually we have undergrads helping us, helping others. And that is usually done through STEM Pathways, which is a very nice outreach program that we support here at the university. And that's it. I'd like to thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thanks so much, Samuel. So we're going to use the Q&A through Zoom, or you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you if you have any questions. Joan, there we go. See how this works.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so I'm Joan Harrison, and I'm a research engineer from the University of Paris-Saclay in France. And so thank you for this very nice presentation. I had a couple of questions. I tried to limit to first, just to start. You mentioned at the end of your presentation that the DAMP is semi-automated and the CTL is fully automated. And I would like to know, what do you mean by automation? Is just about robots, or do you do automation also between pieces of softwares and between softwares and hardware equipment?
I think the latter one is the more accurate. I think so our, say, primary research group, which is Doug Dansmore research group, is a software engineering research group. So we came from software, and I think we're trying to make like a full stack sort of like automation from software to hardware, and thinking how to design in a reproducible way also, or implement, or say build DNA fragments in a reproducible way. So it's like short answer is like software and hardware. And then I think the key thing here is like all those metrics and standards that I've been mentioned throughout the presentation. Those are all for us to get to a point we can say we can make it in a reproducible way, automatable way, from designing in a software piece to implementing using a robot, and what is the software that we need for the robot to also make that in a repetitive way. So I think it's the entire workflow that we should care about, and we're doing that.
Okay, and do you use Scientific Workflow Manager to do automation on the design part? I mean,
yeah. So yes, we use like a bunch of like software tools, and one of the ones that we like playing a lot is Cello. It's one of our it's like a paper that we like Doug Densmore published with Chris Voigt from MIT in 2015. You probably know that. So we like to play with that particular tool to automate design. So it's not like coming from on a very abstract idea of what we want, and then being able to get like DNA outputs out of it. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
You're on mute, Ben.
Great.
Hello.
There we go.
Are there
Sorry.
questions in the chat? I don't know, maybe.
There's
There
one from
Babak?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Babak.
I can describe my question. First of all, great presentation. Thanks for sharing details. My name is Babak, and I'm a chemical engineer and also an entrepreneur. And I was interested in learning more about the training services, since you had mentioned on one of your slides. Now, I was looking through the DAMP Labs website, but I couldn't find much information on the services you provide. So is there another
really?
place? Yeah, I mean,
No,
I
wait.
couldn't find.
Let me share right away.
Sure, please.
Okay, let me just get anything here. So if you go here, DAMP Lab services, okay, you can either do that, but if you want to navigate, so there's like services here, and if you click, it's just that web page. Yeah, this slide that I was showing before. You see this?
Okay. Yes.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So then you could see here the costs and everything. And then one way to now go ahead and then connect to us would be sending. You can just contact us, or or just talk to me, send an email, but something like within those lines. You can say, I'm interested in this service, and then there's going to be someone following up with you on what exactly you want, and then having conversations with you. And we're almost like streamlining this process of ordering. We're creating a new software for ordering from the website, but we don't have that yet, unfortunately. But right now, I say that you pick here what you want, or see what is interesting for you, and then you can contact us by this contact form, and we're going to reach out to you.
Okay, and these services can be offered to entrepreneurs as well, not only students, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, most definitely. Yeah. Perfect. And then so you could either find the services here, like there's an external rate value, you see there. So yeah, some of them don't have. So this one has. And then the other way would be to go to our core facility website in Boston University website, where you can have like a complete list. But again, easiest thing is just contacting us, and then we can make a we can just arrange a call and can talk.
Sounds good. Very helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I have a couple of questions, since there aren't any in the Q&A. I'm curious about if service income, so not grants, but external services that you're providing, is that income boom and bust, or is it a more or less steady stream that you can budget for and maybe even look forward to increasing over time?
Yeah, I think it's the second option, Ben. To be very honest with you and transparent, I think our success right now is making sponsorships and contributing with projects, and then we're still figuring out how to do this exactly thing that we just talked about, or with the previous person now asking the question. So like this is very rare, like someone going through the website and picking services and things like that is very rare. And I really hope we're gonna, by providing and then teaching people how to interact with us, and then doing exactly what we've just done now, showing off that we have the services and capability and people can interact. I think with that, we're going to engage more people. But I have to be honest, like, this is not so easy. That's not, this is probably the hardest part.
There's a
Mega.
question. Yeah.
Hi,
Hello, Mega.
Samuel.
Hello.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm at GIFS in Saskatoon, and I'm one of Ben's colleagues at GIFS. So I'm wondering, what kind of strategy did you take for building industry partnerships? Were you doing a lot of outreach, or is it mostly industry coming to you?
Yeah, I think the industry is not necessarily, it's hard to have them like come to us, to be honest. So we're basically trying to reach out to them. And then I think the best strategy right now has been creating events, conferences, and webinars and things like that, so they can expose their brand. And so we start talking to sales and marketing sort of like departments, and then luckily we're going to have the opportunity to reach to someone who's like a technical lead or something, who's actually needing something from us. So
Right.
I say start from like marketing and sales department from big companies through like conferences and stuff, and then try to get an attention like internally in their companies by some tech guy.
Okay.
That'll
Thanks,
be my
Samuel.
bet. And
Okay.
it's what we're trying, actually. It's exactly what we're trying.
Right. I do have a follow-up question this time for a
Yep.
follow-up. Okay. I'm just
Yep.
wondering, like, how are you basing like your pricing for services on? Like, how do you base your pricing?
Yeah, this is if you want to get my spreadsheet, which is provided by the university, I can give you. But I think if you're inside the university or some like bigger infrastructure or structure, I think you should start asking someone from some department that I never remember the name, but it's about like administration, business. They are gonna guide you. See, they have like personnel, like usually someone at the university who take care of core facilities. They're gonna be the ones wanting to help you because they want to make sure all the legal terms and legal, administration terms are correct, and the math are made correctly as well. So you should not invent anything unless you really know a lot about like those business, calculations and things. But in my case, of course, I didn't do anything. I just like I looked for someone who knew it and was responsible for that right after I became a core facility. So that's why I'm telling like everyone that it's really important that you become sort of like a core facility or something that university understands, and can put you in a category they understand, and they're gonna provide like all the support and help for making everything else, hopefully.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, might have time for one more question. I've just thrown this up on the screen as we prepare to wrap up. So for those of you in the audience, I would love for you to give a talk. And here are some suggested topics. If you'd like to take a screenshot, we'll probably send this in an email as well. Can't tell if there's any other questions.
Let's see. Okay.
I have a lot more, but this isn't going to be the last time we talk as a group. So I think there'll be more opportunity for conversation next time.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think we might try and wrap up. Thank you so much, Samuel, for a fabulous presentation. I hope it's been food for thought for people around the world. This has been recorded and it will be posted on the GBA YouTube channel. And as Ben said, we're really keen to hear your, what works, what doesn't work. We've heard today from Samuel from an academic perspective. It'd be really great to hear from people who are sort of, really working across into industry as well. please reach out to us if you have, if you'd like to speak, or you know somebody who might like to speak and you want to strongly suggest them, that they might be great. Ben and I we're gonna catch up, and we're also really keen to get more people onto our working group so we can shape this and to address the questions that are front of mind for everybody. So I hand back to Ben to close us out.
Thanks so much, Alison. So I'm just going to quickly read off some of these topics, and if any of them sound interesting to you, please don't hesitate to reach out. So setting up a biofoundry from scratch, comms, so communications, raising awareness, accelerating outreach and branding the biofoundry internally, partnerships and agreements, so the types of agreements that you work with and how you manage IP. It was really interesting, Samuel, that you did bring that up, and I know there's
right.
even from an academic point of view, I think there's quite a lot of diversity in ways biofoundries handle partnerships and agreements. So I think that could be a really interesting conversation unto itself.
That's right.
5 to 10 minute case studies. So that's maybe might involve a little bit more planning because we'd be hoping to get a few speakers, but just short and sweet stories from start, like how a project got started and what it resulted in. And that might be a failure as well. We don't talk about that enough, but I think, you know, learning from our mistakes, sharing that is very much in the spirit of the GBA. And I think that those could be really interesting conversations as well. And then maybe some more food for thought, and I think a longer term goal that we're all trying to think about are a standardized menu of services. So Samuel, you pointed out that Damp Lab has developed some of these, but when we think about everything that goes into, for example, strain engineering or strain phenotyping or all of that stuff, it's a multi-step process, and thinking about a standard price for that can be a bit of a challenge. So that could be a really interesting conversation too.
Yeah.
So we don't have a date set for the next one, but we're planning on hosting this every 3 months. So the audience here has enough time, hopefully, to think on these and reach out if you'd like to speak on one of these topics. Okay, thanks everyone.
That was great.
Thanks,
Thank you, Ben.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Alison. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Our pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.